during the off season is where a lot of coaches might develop some aerobic type capacity training for their athletes. And then they tend to go into the season doing more of higher intensity interval type training. Is that a smart or not a smart idea? That's something we can talk about later on down the road. But we're going to focus on coming into the season, why it's important to develop an aerobic type base or foundation for your athletes. That way, when they're performing during the season, their performance does not decrease. So what this study looked at was they took a group of soccer athletes and they separated the two groups. One group was classified as being aerobically fit, the other not aerobically fit. And the way they classified aerobically fit or defined it was utilizing their VO2 max score, and they split them up into two groups. Now what they did was have them perform bouts of high intensity sprints followed by 30 seconds of recovery and so on. And what we're going to focus on today is how being aerobically fit or not aerobically fit impacted their sprint performance, along with how well they're able to recover within those 30 seconds of rest periods. So we look on the TV, we're going to look at, should coaches focus more on the aerobic base type training for conditioning, or should we be doing more interval, higher intensity type training? To me, the answer is easy. Do both. However, what this research showed was athletes who were more aerobically fit going into these bouts were much better at recovering within those 30 seconds than not being aerobically fit. Along with those sprint improvements were much higher with the group who were aerobically fit versus non-aerobically fit. So what they looked at was the sport of soccer, and roughly about 3 to 5% of a 90-minute match are high-intensity bouts of effort. So it's not that many, but those bouts could mean the difference of scoring that goal and winning the game. So it is important to be able to perform high-intensity bouts when you need to, especially during the latter stages of the game. What they looked at was their ability to repeat sprint performance, followed by 30 seconds and so on. And what the results showed is the athletes who were better aerobically fit after those 30 seconds of rest in between performed better on the sprints, and they were able to drop their heart rate at a much faster rate than those who were not aerobically fit. So that's the key thing we're going to focus on, is those 30 seconds. So their findings at the end were, again, athletes who were more aerobically fit, better at performing bouts of high intensity effort followed by 30 seconds. So that should tell you right off the bat, if you're working with athletes who perform intermittently during their sport, they need to focus on building a strong aerobic foundation and improve their aerobic fitness. That could mean doing some interval type training, but that can also be doing some tempo type training, some aerobic capacity type training. So one of the things that also stood out is their measurements within those 30 seconds and their ability to drop their heart rate much faster than those who were not aerobically fit. So I work with professional boxers, and after each round of 3 minutes of performance, they get 1 minute of rest. One of the things that we do with our athletes is we have a heart rate monitor on them while they're doing their training and their conditioning with myself, and following some type of stimulus, I give them anywhere from 30 to a minute of recovery. Their goal is to drop that heart rate down as fast as they can. It becomes very conscious. So that way when they're in their sparring sessions, it becomes normal. When they hit that 1 minute of rest in the corner, they're automatically bringing that heart rate back down. It becomes conscious. That way when they're going into the next round, especially in the later stages, which we term the championship rounds, they're not utilizing as much fuel or expending as much unnecessary energy as their opponent. So they might be walking back into that next round at about 130 beats per minute versus their opponent who might still be at about 160 beats per minute. That means they're coming into that round more fatigued. The hands might drop, technique's going to go, and that's where my athlete's going to have a huge advantage, being able to control their heart rate and not use unnecessary fuel. So if you look at this graph, the peak So the blue line is a fit or an aerobic fit type of person. The gray line is an unfit person. So at the 0, they're both about 200 beats per minute, their heart rate. Following, the blue line starts to drop at a much rapid rate for the fit person versus the unfit person. It's a little bit less of a decline. So after 1 minute of rest period following the bout of exercise, the fit person's already at about 130 beats per minute versus the unfit person is about hovering around 170 beats per minute. So that should tell you right off the bat, if you're not developing a strong aerobic base, it's going to hurt you once you're doing more of the intermittent type high effort bouts within your sport. So at the end of the day, make sure your athletes have that aerobic foundation and work some aerobic capacity to get them fit. So that way when you are doing more interval type training or when they have to perform while they're fatiguing, their performance is not going to decrease as rapidly as someone who doesn't have that aerobic capacity or the aerobic foundation. So coaches, make sure if you have athletes who are not technically aerobically fit, work on that before you start doing tons of interval type training. But again, the answer is always it depends. It doesn't mean interval type training is not important. You can still develop a great base doing interval type training. It just means make sure you critically analyze that program and do what's best for that given athlete. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop some comments. We'd love for you to share this video or tag teammates, coaches, or any other friends who might benefit from this information, or any other of your coaches as well. So thank you, and we'll talk again next time.